You know what happens when birds learn to fly? They leave the nest! What? Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming at you to review a movie that's not a horror movie. I don't know how many views this review is going to get because I primarily do horror movie reviews and horror movie this and that and stuff, and sometimes when I do a review that's not a horror movie review, maybe it doesn't get a whole hell of a lot of views, but whatever. Since I just recently rewatched this movie recently, I guess I was going to do some video or two or whatever today. I thought, well, let's just review this movie because I just rewatched it, and this is kind of a movie that's been a part of my life here and there ever since it was in the theater. I actually saw this movie in the theater. I'm coming at you to review Batteries Not Included from the year 1987. Steven Spielberg, among others, executive produced quote-unquote family film starring Jessica Tandy and Hume Cronin, or however the hell you say his name. I'm going to try not to do any swear words or swear in this review because it's a PG rated film, so I'm going to try not to swear in this review. But so we actually saw this in the theater, first run theater, when it came out. It's so funny because like in 1987 I have no idea how I would have ever come to know about movies. I guess the only way, in the 80s you were familiar with movies is if you were in a movie and you saw a trailer for a movie, or if you saw a TV spot on TV, or if you just saw an ad in the paper. I mean, those are like the three main ways you'd even become aware of a movie in the 80s. I suppose if you were one of these kind of people who bought magazines and this kind of stuff, you could probably find out about upcoming movies that way. But for the life of me, being 10 years old, I have no idea how this movie crossed my radar, but probably saw a trailer or TV spot or something like that. But being a fan of like robots at 10 years old, and spaceships and all this kind of stuff, and special effects, visual effects and stuff, that was the main thing that intrigued me about this movie, is these little kind of alien spacecraft machines and this kind of stuff. So as a visual effects enthusiast, even at 10 years old and stuff, and interested in robots and spaceships and stuff, this movie interested me for that reason. So that's why we saw it. I remember, God, I wish I would have kept this clipping. I think I even clipped the clipping out of the paper. It seems to me like around, I don't know if this was a nationwide promotion or if it was just around my area, but it seems to me like they were doing like a free showing or something like that. I don't know if we went to the free showing, but it seemed like there was like a free showing of it, maybe one specific time or on one specific date or something like that. But I can remember vividly, in this clipping that I may have had for a while at the time, it was in the paper, for the this movie, Showtime's an ad for this movie or whatever, and it said something about a free showing or complimentary screenings or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. Did this come out like for the holidays? I'm not exactly sure what time of year this came out, but regardless, we did end up seeing this in the theater, and it was probably a pretty packed theater because I can remember that Jessica Tandy joke about the little umbrellas in the drink so the rain doesn't thin out the liquor. I can still remember that joke, or that line that she delivered, just sent the whole theater just roaring laughter, and I can still remember that. Sometimes you can remember, seeing a movie in the theater, and you can remember certain audience reactions to certain, funny bits or, in certain movies and stuff like that. And I can still remember that audience reaction to that line. But anyway, getting on to the review, if you haven't seen this movie's basically about this really just dilapidated old part of, I don't know, some New York City, or some part in New York City where all these old apartment buildings and buildings in general are being torn down to make way for this new modern this corporate guy. This guy is building skyscrapers, Lacey. So he's tearing down all these old buildings and apartment buildings and businesses and stuff, these old, just really, really old buildings to make way for his new buildings and stuff. And the premise of this movie is, in this building, on the bottom of the building, there's this diner where this old couple, this Jessica Tandy and this Hume Cronin, or however the hell you say his last name. I think they were married. I think they were a couple or something like that, or married in real life or something like that. I don't know why they have different last names, but maybe they just kept the stage names. I don't know. It seems to me like they were, maybe I misunderstood or something like that, but it seems to me like they were married in real life, or maybe not. I don't remember. I'm not exactly sure. But Jessica Tandy and Hugh, or is it Hugh or Hume? I don't know how the hell to pronounce even his first name, I guess. But they're the older, couple that are, I don't know how old they are, freaking 70 something or 80 something in this movie, and they still have this diner on the bottom floor, and they live, there's an apartment building above where they, that couple and other people live in the apartment and stuff. And the premise of this movie is basically the guy, this Lacey, bigwig guy who's building all these new skyscrapers and stuff, is hiring these punks, like this one guy who would go on to be in Leviathan, who plays this Mexican kind of just punk who's hired, among other punks that he knows and stuff, is hired by this guy to basically, go around and give people, money to get the heck out of the building or whatever, and if they don't leave, then do other, money first. If they don't leave, then, maybe do more or less nice ways of getting them out and stuff like that. But this is really a depressing movie, having revisited it lately. I mean, I have this idea that it's so much like it's some kind of heartwarming movie or whatever. The first 20 minutes or so, I think it was like 22 minutes of this movie, are like just completely depressing, because it's this guy going around giving these people hard times. You basically see this guy give everyone a hard time in the apartment building, and the old couple. And not only that, but I mean, another thing that's really a bummer about this movie, I don't know why they had to have this. There's so many plot points in this movie that I just think were unnecessary, but one of the plot points in this movie is Jessica Tandy is kind of, not really all there, and possibly a character who's suffering from Alzheimer's or whatever, and up until the point the aliens and stuff come, then the whole point of her being not with it kind of pays off when, she's talking about aliens and this and that, and they finally see him, and then she does that famous look where she looks at the camera like, see, like, I'm not crazy. Like, in this one instance, I'm actually not crazy. One instance out of 100,000,000,001 instance, I'm not freaking crazy. But I don't really understand. I mean, maybe you can have the character be like goofy and senile and stuff, but the one thing I hated about this movie upon rewatching it recently was this whole running gag that you really don't find out. We just hint at, and then you find out later on towards the end of the movie about this whole thing about, her calling everyone Bobby and saying, "Where's Bobby? I don't hear him out there playing," or whatever, and Bobby, their son Bobby and stuff, and you hear about her talking about Bobby. She sees a guy, and she thinks he's Bobby. She thinks this Mexican guy is Bobby. And what's so funny, being a 10-year-old seeing this in the theater, I actually thought, because she was calling this Mexican guy Bobby throughout the whole movie, I actually thought that was her son as a 10-year-old. Like, and I did think it was weird that he was Mexican, and they were. I don't think I really connected the fact that they were so much more older to have such a young son or whatever. But I was like, why is he Mexican, and why does he not like her? So when I was 10 years old and saw this for the first time, I thought that Mexican guy that she keeps calling Bobby was in fact her son, because I was like, I didn't understand at the time, like, the senile aspect, and as a 10-year-old, I just kind of took things at face value, like, she's calling this Mexican guy repeatedly throughout the movie Bobby's her son, so he must be, or whatever. That was just me as a 10-year-old, but that's the one thing I think was just an added layer of depressingness that comes up towards the end of the movie, when we find out, of course, that Bobby died at the age of 19 or something like that, or 20, in a car wreck, and maybe just her what's that called? What's that? I think what's that word? I forgot what that word was, but I think that has to do with the actual disease too, forgetfulness, but. Yeah, maybe, so that word of Alzheimer's, that's what that word is. So maybe her Alzheimer's contributed to the fact, along with just maybe shock and not wanting to accept it, contributed to the fact that, she doesn't want to believe or live in a world where, her son had actually died at 19 or 20 or whatever. Anyway, that was a plot point that, probably the number one plot point of this whole movie, that I just removed, because it's just an added aching wound, an open sore, an open wound that's just like on top of the plethora of other things about this movie that's just depressing. I was just like, oh my gosh, that's just not needed, because there's so much. This movie is just like such a downer kind of, without that one added thing. But like I was saying, like, the first 20 minutes of this movie is just the guys going around trying to evict these people, and these people's lives just being crap because their houses, their homes are in danger, and this one artist guy, girlfriend leaves him, and she's that one chick. I thought she had a bigger part in this movie, but she's that one chick from from the movie Creature that I just reviewed not long ago, and she's also in a little bit part in Inner Space, which I think was the same year or right around the same time. Another Steven Spielberg executive produced movie directed by Joe Dante, Inner Space, which I like more than this. I remember her having a bigger role in this movie, but apparently she's the artist's girlfriend who just leaves him at the beginning of the movie and you never see her again. But I'm not even going to bother telling you about all the characters that live in the apartment that are threatened by, the loss of their home, or threatened by this, this lazy guy who wants to get rid of the building and subsequently their homes or whatever like that. But like I was saying, I keep trying to say the first 22 minutes or so are just depressing because it's just these guys trying to evict all these people, and the one artist guy, his girlfriend leaving him, and it's just depressing. And then it like kind of culminates with them seeing, meeting up with the older people that run the diner downstairs and meeting up with them and having having them trash the diner. And it's just like, you darn well know this diner has been there since I don't know how long, the 50s probably at least. And it's been their livelihood ever since then, or even before then or whatever. And it's just like, oh my gosh. And I will even say the opening credits of this movie really has when I revisited it recently, it's just like this tendency to just lean towards depression. Even the opening credits just start really kind of happy and stuff with all these, this wonderful music done by James Horner, this kind of, big band swing kind of music and stuff. Really fantastic score by James Horner. And it's really lively opening credits, and then, we see all these pictures that are doctored with, of old, with the younger faces of Jessica Tandy and the other guy, like, plastered on these other people. And you can see these pictures are so blatantly doctored and stuff like that. I mean, like a frickin', 70-year-old now with a frickin' phone can do better, photoshopped in this opening credit scenes. But, just all these, basically it shows them as, a younger couple in the diner in the neighborhood and stuff. And then throughout the opening credits, then even the music changes, and then even the opening credits, like halfway through, get depressing as you can see the neighborhood's getting old and crumbling and all this and that. It's just like, oh my gosh. So finally, after the 22-minute mark or whatever, when everything's all, we established all the depressing details of this movie, then these aliens, come zipping on in and at night, and it's kind of like two alien spaceships. So as an adult, I mean, I didn't really know what the hell this was. I mean, I guess I still don't know what the hell these are. I mean, you can only imagine that these are like, it's kind of like that one guy said, they're from a small planet. These are spaceships and they're from a small planet. But the spaceships don't really appear to be like necessarily spaceships so much as life. I mean, the ships themselves are like life forms, it's not necessarily like spaceships with a bunch of crew, although one point a character takes like a microscope or a magnifying glass and looks at it and can see all this light and stuff going. Speaking of light, these little light specks and stuff zipping around, so we don't know if that's crew members. It's kind of vague, so we don't necessarily know if these are just spaceships from a smaller planet, or if these are just robotic life forms. We don't really ever find that out. But basically what ends up happening is these these two ships basically come, and basically it's kind of like if there was a couple geese or a couple ducks or something that were going to fly in and make a nest and raise babies. That's basically what these spaceships are wanting to do. And they, we never find out why they end up at this ramshackle apartment complex. I guess it doesn't really matter. Later on, a bunch of characters, like two or three separate characters will speculate, well, we needed help, I think that they're here because of me, and then these other people, they're here because of us, and then this other person, they're here because of me. Maybe they just do it twice, but this one character, oh my gosh, I see the light. This one character witnesses, a couple of people saying the same thing, and he's like, yeah, whatever, you suckers and stuff, and oh my gosh, one thing I will say about this movie is, it sure is like, I don't know, detail oriented. There's just a lot of characters, a lot of plot points, a lot of stuff going on, but basically to make the review not as long, I will just say that that's the gist of the movie. these aliens basically, you know, we can only assume it's kind of like a male and female aliens, basically make a nest on top of the, you know, roof of this building in this little ramshackle, you know, work shed or whatever. And basically early on, Jessica Tandy, like that night when they fly in and stuff, becomes right away becomes aware of what's going on and stuff, and she's the one who kind of, I think she's just spends like the night with them or whatever, and then the next day or next morning or whatever, you know, she's still up and futzing around with them up in the on the roof and stuff, and kind of introduces them, you know, the two little alien spaceships, to the rest of the apartment building stuff, people and this and that, and you know, that's that famous shot where she like looks at the camera like, see, I'm not crazy this once. And so that's the premise of this movie, and then they, you know, subsequently help them, you know, by feeding them nuts and bolts and, you know, freaking diet Pepsi cans and stuff. You know, they help them basically have, you know, 3 little spaceship babies, and one of them is like stillborn, and, you know, of course that plays into the title of this movie. This one black guy is, you know, is like an ex-boxer guy. He's like he kind of comes across like a man-child in this movie or whatever. He's like, he doesn't say, I think pretty much everything he says is just like based off commercials, like that one character from the Dream Team or whatever. It's just like this little, you know, 2 little baby robots pop out and hopping around, and this third one pops out and it's just eyes closed, stillborn baby robot, and he's like, batteries not included. You said the title, you know, it's just like one of those moments as a viewer. I didn't think anything of it as a 10-year-old, but now it's just like, yay, you said the title. And of course, you know, batteries not included. It's kind of funny how they throw it in there. It was something that was heard on, you know, frickin' TV ads and probably radio ads and stuff in the 80s. I don't know if it was something that was specific in ads to the 80s or whatever, where, you know, I don't even know why the hell. It's just kind of stupid, you know. It's like if you do a flashlight commercial or something, or if you do I don't know what the hell, just a, you know, a battery-powered shaver, just maybe a toy, you know, battery-powered toy or whatever. They just like say this and that, and then the commercial would end with like, batteries not included. You know, and it's just like, so that was an 80s thing. It would be interesting to know if that, you know, was something that, like I say, was just in the 80s in commercials and stuff, but you even hear it like, you know, in an ad on a TV in the movie, which is kind of cool. So the title of the movie is based on this thing that you'd hear in commercials in the 80s for battery-powered products, and when they were too cheap to actually include batteries with, and it's just like, oh my gosh. So I think the title alludes to that one moment there's a stillborn frickin' baby robot or whatever. That's the only thing I can really think of. So another thing these robots do, they don't just come and use electricity and just, you know, leech off these people. They contribute too, because another thing, one of the big things these robots do is they can fix things, you know, broken picture frames, you know, watches. If you smash it, they can fix a watch, and what we find out in the movie is they fix the frickin' diner, which is great. And, you know, I gotta admit, I mean, it as much as the opening 20-something minutes were like depressing and stuff, I mean, it is really just depressing, but, you know, I mean, it's almost like, you know, I don't know, that's what the movie makers are thinking, you know, you have to go low so you can go high, but I mean, my argument is just like, you know, I don't know if you gotta go so low as they do in movies, this movie and movies like it, and E.T. and stuff, where E.T. dies, only to like come back like 30 seconds later, he's alive. And I just, as an adult watching these movies, you become very much aware of how much they just, these movies, kind of these family movies that have all these ups and downs and stuff, sad, happy, they just F with your emotions, you know, almost to, and this is like a perfect example of just almost to an extent that is, you know, maniacal or really sadistic. It's just like, yeah, let's just F with the viewer's emotions and just, you know, start low, we'll go high, go low again, go high. So basically what ends up happening is the freaking, you know, the spaceships end up completely making the downstairs diner that was smashed the day before, you know, brand new, and it's just this great scene. The music's absolutely amazing during this scene, and all rejoice and stuff, and you know, they actually dance around, and they actually open up the diner again for the construction workers that are working around destroying the other buildings and stuff. And as the movie progresses, the construction workers are kind of get to be a little more on the, you know, the side of the, you know, the diner owners and the people living in the building and stuff. And you know, throughout the whole course of the movie, this Mexican guy and stuff is trying to, you know, he wants to do a good job with this crappy job of being this guy paid to, you know, get these people out of the apartment and stuff. You know, as the movie progresses, he keeps on trying to figure out ways he can serve his corporate, you know, boss guy who's serving his corporate boss guy as good as he can by getting rid of the people and stuff, and he keeps failing, and there's this comedy bits with the Mexican guy, you know, and, you know, being zapped and, you know, by the spaceships and stuff, and his hair being all big, and, you know, all this and that, and he's scared, you know, he's sent out of there, and he's scared of the place and stuff. This review is just crazy. So you know, this is what happens when I do a review without notes. So you know, there's a lot of ups and downs in this movie, and seeing it as an adult, and, you know, I don't know, I kind of enjoyed this movie as a kid and a young adult and stuff, but it's kind of like the more that time passes, and it's just like you watch this again, and it's just like, oh, it's so depressing. You know, usually movies don't start out depressing. You know, they'll be happy throughout the movie, and then they'll, you know, third into it, they'll do this depressing, you know, only to be like and happy again. But this movie, I just, you know, having rewatched it recently, it's just like, gosh, it even starts low and then goes high and then goes low and then goes high at the end. It's just like there's too much dilly-dallying with your emotions in this movie for me. And, you know, they have the babies and then the one stillborn. So it's like every, you know, if there's a positive thing, then you gotta have even a negative of the positive thing. You know, we have two babies, yay, and then later on, you know, then a few moments later, the stillborn baby pops out, and it's like, God, you can't let us have this one frickin' happy moment without making something sad about it. You know, stillborn robot baby, and it's just like, that's what I mean about this movie. I'm just getting pissed off actually just thinking about it. It's just like, you know, let us have a happy moment without tearing our heart out like right after. I mean, please? So, winding down the review, that's pretty much the premise of this movie. Starts depressing, gets happy, has some fun throughout the middle point, then gets depressing again when, you know, this one guy, I don't know, I think Carlos is the Mexican guy's name Carlos? I don't know. If it isn't, it might as well be. The Mexican guy, you know, the Lacey guy hires some other guy, since Carlos isn't evicting them well enough, this other guy to basically burn the place down. And towards the end of the movie, of course, they burn, you know, the whole place down. And during this scene, Carlos kind of becomes a hero because they find out after the stuff's, you know, after the place is all set to burn and stuff, and I think it's already on fire, when they realize that Jessica Tandy character is still, you know, is still in the building, and Carlos goes in. Is it Carlos? Well, we'll just call him Carlos. Goes in and rescues her. So, you know, that character kind of redeems himself a little bit, and there's this kind of dramatic scene. That's when Jessica Tandy character realizes that, you know, he's saying, oh, because since she calls him Bobby throughout the whole movie, he's trying to use that to get her out of the apartment. He's like, it's Bobby, come downstairs, I gotta show you my new car. And she's like, you're not Bobby's, you know, the one time, you know, so right when he starts calling him, actually taking the lie and calling himself Bobby, then she's like, no, you're not him. And that's when she realizes that she sees the clipping in the book or whatever, the photo album, that, you know, Bobby's dead. And it's just, so that's a depressing plot point, you know, on top of this already depressing scene of the building being burned down and her life being in danger. And it's just like, I gotta tell you, for a family movie, this might be one of the more depressing frickin' family movies of the 80s that I can, I mean, there's a lot of them and stuff with depressing down moments and stuff, but this one is just like layers on the depression like no one's business. And of course he ends up getting her out of the, you know, place, saves her, the apartment, and the whole building burns to the ground and crumbles, and everything's all gone and depressing, and it's all over. And, you know, while, you know, other characters are basically going around New York trying to, I don't even know why are they trying to find the robots, or they're trying to, the one black guy, boxer guy, you know, oh, I didn't mention this, that guy is good with electronics and gadgets and this and that. He ends up fixing and bringing to life the stillborn robot baby or whatever, so he's kind of like a surrogate dad to the thing, and he ends up going out in New York or whatever, trying to, I think, find the babies or find that particular baby or whatever. They end up finding the babies, and the parents end up finding them. And so you while they're doing that is when the place is burning down and Jessica Tandy's saved and all this and that. And so of course at the very end of the movie you're all depressed and life's hell, and you started depressed, got happy, only to get depressed again. And then I don't know, it seems like not long after this, because the characters are like, I don't know, they're like all visiting Jessica Tandy character in the hospital or something like that, and then someone comes into, then there's this depressing scene which is just completely not necessary at the audience for the Carlos, and it is kind of a tearjerker because, this guy who was a jerk the whole time, this Mexican guy, actually brings like flowers and something, or flowers and chocolates or something to Jessica Tandy's character in the hospital. And I mean, that's like a touching, this jerk going, saving her and going good is a touching moment. And here again, it's like, here's a touching moment, and the filmmakers turn this touching moment where, the husband is like not being privy to the scene that happened the night before, where she realizes that this isn't Bobby, and that she realizes that Bobby is in fact dead. The husband puts his arm around the Mexican guy and goes, "Look, it's Bobby. He's back." And the guy's all smiling, holding the flowers, and she just turns into tears. And it's just like, oh my God. Like, here's this scene where it is actually kind of heartwarming, where this Mexican guy actually cares about this woman having, saved her, and, all this and that from the burning building. And we have to, turn it into the moment where, she, makes it aware to her husband that she, is in fact aware of the fact that her son's being dead. And it's just like, oh my gosh. So I'm really not keen on the writers of this movie. They just want to just get you with a left-right-left combo like every chance they get. And, here's a chance for like a warm, fuzzy moment, and it's just shot down with more depression. Anyway, to cut the review short as possible, I will say that, of course, someone comes to the hospital, right a few seconds after that depressing slump of her, breaking down into tears over the fact that, Bobby's dead or whatever. Someone comes into the hospital or something, is like, "Hey, you got to check this place out, or there's a ruckus going on down where your place is or whatever." Only to pull up, everyone gets takes a cab or whatever they do in New York back to their, location of their ramshackle, newly burned down and demolished, destroyed house / business, to see that it's just standing there, brand new, completely refabricated, reconstructed, as if it was, day number one of that place being just how it was in the 40s or the 50s or whenever it was, brand spanking new, and maybe even 20s, 30s, 40s, but back how it was when it was brand spanking new, and brand new diner, brand new, just in the complete literal sense of being a brand new spanking new building and stuff. And oh yay, movie starts depressing, goes happy, goes depressing, and goes happy again. And of course, they can't tear the building down because it's brand new, and so they end up the punchline of this movie, the joke of this movie, is at the end of the movie. It's we see these huge skyscrapers, and we kind of pan down to see the little building right in between them. And it is kind of reminiscent of the Twin Towers, except the only difference is that it's they've got slants on each building or whatever. But it is kind of interesting how it's the Twin Towers, because they probably would have made one big building, but then they had to cut the buildings in half to allow for the old-fashioned building that was refabricated by the aliens. Oh, that's what happened at the end of the movie. All of the the aliens and the babies came back, and then we see this just shot at night of all the other alien ships appear and stuff like that, and just droves and droves and droves of other alien ships appear. And that's another heartfelt moment where the music's all beautiful, and it just jerks a tear from your eye, and all these just droves and droves of other alien ships fill the frame. And so basically, with all their help, they completely rebuilt the the building from scratch or whatever. So this review went, of course, on a lot longer than was intended or whatever, but I just had to, complain and complain and complain about the amount of negativity and depressing scenes and ideas in this movie is just, as an adult, just kind of blew my mind. Like, oh my gosh, like gee willikers or whatever. So my stars for this movie, you know what? I mean, it's got so much. You know what? Okay, so I'll go as high as 2 1/4 stars out of 4 stars for batteries not included. I was just going to go 2, but, I don't know. We'll go 2 1/4 stars out of 4 stars. One thing that is great about this movie in retrospect and being able to watch it now, being so many years after it was made or whatever, is being able to watch a movie from the analog era, towards the end of the analog visual effects era, when it's all, there's no digital effects, it's all just, blue screen models and all this stuff, and even some, Dave Allen stop motion animation and stuff like that. So one thing, probably the best thing about this movie, having rewatched it and revisited it recently, was just that, the analog visual effect aspect and how well that stuff really holds up and how well, those effects really were. And it's really, I still think it's really a shame, when effects went digital and computer and stuff, because I think with so many things that go the way of the dodo just because something new is invented or whatever, like color movies or, silent movies going to, sound, black and white movies going to color, so many things that, it doesn't mean that silent movies are inferior, it doesn't mean that black and white is inferior. It doesn't, going from analog to digital visual effects. It doesn't mean analog effects are inferior. It's just such a shame that things are, ways of doing things are left behind just because, new, more easier ways or are invented and stuff. That's the one takeaway from rewatching this movie that I did get as well. Those analog visual effects are really kind of cool. They hold up really well in a lot of instances, and I just think it's almost like more satisfying somehow, those analog visual effects compared to just computer now, where where in this movie you've got, miniatures and actual models, photographed and composited into scenes and stuff, and they do a really, really, really good job with the visual effects and the spaceship stuff in the movie and stuff. And that's, for me, watching it again, the most positive takeaway from this, having rewatched it experience is just like, wow, the visual effects are fun, and the spaceships and stuff are really executed, even watching it now in a way that is really, really satisfying. And it does make you miss the analog visual effects of the 80s and stuff, late 80s, early 90s or whatever. So I think that'll pretty much do it for my review of Batteries Not Included. If you haven't seen it, I wouldn't necessarily run out to see it because, like I say, for this movie just completely just demolished me. When I just rewatched it, I was just like, I don't know, it's just, maybe I was just in a particularly vulnerable mental, state or whatever. It was just like, it was kind of like the black, ex-boxer character in the movie. It's just like, oh, you like this scene? Well, watch this. Oh, you think that's cute? Watch this. Heartwarming? Well, not for long. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't remember. Oh, that's one thing I will say in this movie, about this movie, that before I end the review, that I almost forgot to mention is, because we saw this in the theater when I was 10 years old, and I remember, because there's a couple, and since they're in the movie, I can say them in the review, there's a couple instances where the same character says, "God damn it, Faye," or "God damn it," like twice in the movie. And I remember thinking, even as a 10-year-old, I'm like, when I was watching it in the theater, I'm like, God, why do they gotta put, those swear words, like a quote-unquote family movie, when families are just here for some good time with their kids or whatever. It's just like, even as a 10-year-old, 10-year-old watching this, I felt bad for the for the other 10-year-olds and the families and stuff that were in the theater watching this. It's just like, I never understand why they gotta put, why do you gotta say God damn it? You can just say damn it, damn it, Faye, damn it. You don't have to say God damn it like twice in a PG kid movie, family movie. It's just like, oh my gosh, that's so. Ever since I saw it in the first run theater in 1987, this movie always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And even as a 10-year-old, I'm sitting in the theater going, what, that that line is not needed. You don't need to have them say "God damn it." I mean, it's just not needed. Just say "damn it," or you know, they're older people. Just say "dag nabbit" or whatever, you know. And I just that's still something I can remember so clearly. Just sitting in the theater, being like, when that first "God damn it" came out, I'm like, God, why? You know, it didn't offend me or anything like that, but I'm just like, you know, maybe some of the families and some of the kids that came to see this movie, maybe they don't want to hear that. I mean, I know it's just words and stuff, but it's just like, I don't know. I just feel like I don't know why they got to put those cuss words and stuff like that in these family movies. But anyway, with that thought, I will end the review. Thank you very much for watching. I don't know if anyone watched this video or our review or not. If you did and you made it up to all the way to the end, thank you very much for doing so. And as always, we'll see you on the next one.